Uniforms folded, flag hangs on the wall. Traded steel and thunder for silence in the hall. The mission's over, the deployment's done, they said. But the war inside my head, it hasn't left its stain. Disappeared. The invisible wounds are the ones that are truly feared. I'm walking on a wire, the pressure's coming down. Is there anyone listening in this lonely town? Full speed ahead after battle.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to another episode of Full Speed Ahead After Battle. As always, I'm your veteran mental health coach here, and we are on the military broadcast radio where we give a veterans a voice. As always, we have a great lineup tonight. We've got David C. Reed. He's spent nearly 30 years in and around leadership and the military, law enforcement, and all kinds of other things. Author of several books and all around great guy coming out of the military, great guy on the topic that we're going to be discussing tonight. But before we get to our guests, let's recap the last week, shall we? Olympics have been on. If a lot of people are watching that, I know I have been. USA women are dominating all the sports, whether it's curling, hockey. Man, hockey, they're outscoring the competitors 30-1. They've only had one goal against them this entire time. They'll be playing for gold. Women's and men's curling, monobobbing, all the different sports at the U.S., we're just killing it in the medal count. That's good to see. That's a lot of what we have. A lot of, USA supporters over there going hard for USA in our sports and everything, showing us a good time. Great to see that. If you've been following me along on social media, you'll know that last week was my last week at last day at Mercedes-Benz. I spent nearly 10 years there doing all kinds of different roles, from funding to title work to program ownership, all kinds of different things. I met a lot of great people there. I got to say, it's a great company to work for. A lot of different changes going on right now. Most importantly, I met my wife there nearly 10 years ago when I first started. We've had a great run at the same company. It's definitely going to be a different change for us, working at two different companies. New schedule, new hours, all that good stuff. But we're going to make it work like we always do. The other, thing that I'm going to miss about that company is day one, I created the Veterans Business Resource Council at Mercedes-Benz Financial Services. And over the years, we've brought a lot of awareness to that company about hiring and working with and around veterans, bringing veteran experience into that company, but also showing that that company supports our veterans in the community by joining in different events going on there. We put together some great programs for our veterans, self-identifying in HR as a veteran status, different programs to get veterans financing and things like that, whether they are creating their own business and using the vans or getting into the cars or anything like that. So I am going to be sad to see that go, but I know it's in good hands. They're going to be doing a lot of good work upcoming with that Veterans BRG. So again, a long 10 years. I owe a lot to them for the experience and everything. But tomorrow starts a new day, a new chapter. And definitely, I would say when I received the letter from the VA stating 100% disability P&T. That is what helped me change my mind, because if you don't know, when you receive that 100% P&T status, that brings a lot of opportunities, a lot of growth, a lot of things that a lot of other disabled veterans don't have. And so that allowed me to take a position that something a little bit more near and dear to me. So technically, it falls under the Wise County Sheriff's Department, but I will be working at the Wise County Animal Shelter, helping those lost animals, those strays, those owner surrenders, taking care of those animals. They have everything from dogs and cats to cows, pigs, and everything else that you find in this cattle ranching farming community that is Wise County. So I've always had a love for law enforcement and our first responders, and so I'm going to be happy working closely with them, supporting them in their endeavors when it comes around the animal shelters. But also, I think a lot of people can agree with me that I know for myself that I love animals more than I do most people. So I think a lot of people feel that way. And so being able to work around them, finding them those forever homes, making families complete, that's going to be something that's a little bit a passion of mine. So I'm going to be excited with the opportunities there. So let's move on to the numbers that we put out every week. Normally, I give you that same basic statistic of 22 veterans commit suicide every day. Numbers gone up and down. When you factor in first responders and the general population, that number rises to right around 30. However, we got some more numbers today. With the recent 2025 VA National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report, the report has come out for the 2025, but it includes all numbers from 2001 to 2023. So if you want to find that whole entire report, you can go to the VA website or just Google your National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report, and you can see all the different numbers and topics in there. But we're going to scan through and we're going to read off some of these highlighted information here in the part one overview. And most importantly, let's start out with the number of suicides. And let's see, veteran suicide of VHA care. So in year or prior year. So that's the veterans who have committed suicide that is going through or has had VH healthcare. If they have had it, the number is at 39%. No VHA care, 61%. Meaning those veterans who are not seeking the VHA care are 61% more likely to commit that suicide. Overall, the veteran suicide rate per 100,000 overall is 35. Now, if you look at the females, it's up to 13.9, slight increase from 13.7 the previous year. And veteran males are 37.8, up from 37.3 the previous years. So let's go down and scroll through some of the major topics that lead to these veteran suicide trends and patterns. Among veterans in the VHA care, suicide rate for those with mental health or substance abuse disorder diagnosis fell 34.7% from 2001 to 2023. So like I said a minute ago, the numbers are slightly down. Mental health, substance abuse, non-mental health risks among veterans in VHA care who died from suicide in 23. 60.9% had a VHA mental health or substance use disorder diagnosis. 39.1% did not. So that means the leading cause in veteran suicide is that mental health, substance abuse, and that's kind of what we talk about here on the show, is that mental health and the awareness around it. Among transitioning service members, death by suicide rates within 12 months of separation from active military were higher among those with DOD and DHA diagnosis of substance use disorder, suicidal ideation, and those with mental health diagnosis prior to military discharge. And again, we always point that out every week, that transition is one of the leading causes in veteran suicide. That's why we have all our guests on to talk about those transitions, what to look for, what to look out for, what not to do. How can we help that transition? Those with TBI or head trauma, research shows increased suicide ideation, attempt, and death rates among people. Each year from 2001 to 2023, suicide rates for veterans in VHA care with TBIs are higher rate than those without. Suicide rate 77.6 per 100,000 for those with the recent diagnosis of TBI, which is 94.3% higher than those without a diagnosis. So those with TBIs and head trauma, that means that they are more likely, 94% more likely to commit suicide than most of our other veterans. So that is definitely something we need to look out for, because that's a large category of our veterans, those hit by IEDs or explosions or falls or anything like that. A lot of TBIs and head trauma in the military. Going next is unsecured firearms. Firearms were involved in 73.3% of veteran deaths by suicide, compared to 52.9% of suicides of non-veterans. So veterans, obviously, with the knowledge of weapons, higher suicide rate with weapons than our civilian counterparts. Homelessness, ending homelessness is a top VA priority. 23, the suicide rate among veterans. Homelessness was 146% higher than for those with diagnosis of homelessness or without diagnosis of homelessness. So still, homeless veterans is still a large part of the suicide population amongst our veterans. Those with MST or military sexual trauma refers to sexual assault or sexual care who reported experiences of it from 22 to 23. Suicide rates of veterans in VHA care who screened fell 25.1% for female veterans and fell 26.0% for male veterans. So suicide among MST survivors is slightly down. So funding, Congress funds VHA suicide prevention programs, crisis line services, research, grants, innovations. 89% of veterans crisis line services, community grants, community coalitions, and direct veteran care services. 11% of those funds goes to veteran outreach, education, research, innovations, and equipping veteran suicide prevention support across the nation. So overall, the VA is trying to do more. It realizes that there is a need for better mental health care within the VA, and I know a lot of different locations are working on increasing that. And so I will give that to the VA that they are stepping it up. So again, those are the basic numbers for this year's report, and that's for all years from 2001 to 2023. So again, the numbers are slightly down, which is good. The exact number for 23, 6,398 veterans committed suicide. That is down from 6,442, which we still have a long ways to go. However, it does show VHA affiliated veterans, or veterans that are seeking that help with the VA, 2,498 suicides in 23, down from 2,574. So those numbers right there, when you talk about just veterans not seeking help, 6,000, just over 6,000, VA veterans seeking help, just over 2,000. So for those veterans out there, if you're wondering if you need to reach out to the VA and get that help, those are your numbers. This is your wake-up call. You are better off going to the VA and seeking that help, whether it's the VA, VFW, American Legion, any of those military veteran groups out there. Go out there and get that help. Okay, it's okay to ask for help. You're not in this alone. Numbers show it. The more you reach out for help, the better off you are. The more likely you are to succeed in this life. And we all need you in this life. Everybody's got a mission after a service. You just got to find what that mission is, but you can't do that if you're not here. And remember, it's not just you that has to suffer. It's those friends, families, and support network that are here after you are gone. So you got to remember that as well. So with those numbers, that is the, again, overview. Go Google the rest of it. There's a lot of great information. There's about 70-something pages overall on the main report, and a lot of good information in there as far as the numbers and how our veterans can get help, the different programs that they're doing. So be sure to check that out. So with that, we're going to get into our discussion tonight. I know he's got a lot of great information on these topics and then some, and we're going to get into that. But this guy, again, spent nearly 30 years in and around military, law enforcement. He's an author. He's been around. He's done that. So our interview of the week is going to be with David C. Reed. Let's welcome him aboard.
The interview of the week is brought to you by Jersey Mike's, a sub above.
David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh, for having me. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I can't complain. It's another day in paradise, right?
There we go. It's very important topics that you bring up, and just listening to those stats that you listed, I think everybody that is in the veteran community knows those stats to be accurate and true, just based off the number of funerals or interventions, things like that we have to take care of. And as a guy, the last half of my career where I was a civilian with the U.S. Army, where I led not only civilians and contractors, but soldiers, Marines, Air Force, transitioning from military into the civilian sector is a big leap. And a lot of people, despite everything that the Army or whatever service you're with does to prepare you, there's still the preparation you've got to do inside. And
absolutely,
very important topic.
Yes, sir, it is. So before we get into that topic, then why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to the people, the viewers, and tell them who you are, where you've been, what got you here?
Well, wow, what got me here? First of all, I do want to say one thing. I'm a little older than you think I am. Not 30 years, 40.
Oh, wow.
Starting in 1979 and until I retired as both a cop and a GS civilian from the Army, as well as, years before that, I was active duty and then I went into the reserves, but spent the biggest part of my career both as a cop on and off, depending on what I was doing in the reserves, but then took a job with the U.S. Army in charge of force protection and law enforcement training for the military police school at Fort Leonard Wood. Very rewarding part of my career, but it did open my eyes to a lot of the things that you're talking about and the difficulties that my civilian employees had as they transitioned from military to civilian. My transition was I went cold turkey. When I left active duty, there was none of the financial planning. There was none of the outreach to the spouse. There was none of the, let me help you with a VA disability claim. None of that. It was, oh, you're quitting, sign right here, and out the door you go. Make sure you clear CIF, make sure you turn in all your crap before you leave.
Right.
And that was really all I got. And so, emotionally, it crept in places that I didn't expect it. But I went almost immediately into civilian law enforcement and met other people like me. And that's really what helped. It helped that law enforcement, the organization that I went into, was structured very militarily and had a good organization and structure to them. So it felt like a natural move. From there, I moved into the Southeast and went to work for a couple of smaller agencies, and they didn't have that structure, and they didn't understand the things that I didn't understand as a veteran. Why are we doing things this way? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? They would look at me like I had a hand growing out of my forehead or something.
Right.
You don't understand what you're talking about, and that created a good deal of issues. But the biggest thing, I think, was that when I left the service, I didn't really have a clear plan other than I wanted to be in civilian law enforcement. Didn't have the financial plan that I probably should have. And also my spouse, was not included in some of this decision and planning that we did. And here's an idea that never occurred to me, that my spouse may need emotional help or advice and counseling.
Right.
And, I found this to be true when I came to work as an Army civilian and began leading both GS civilians, a sector of contractors, all of whom were former military.
Yeah.
And then a contingent of active duty soldiers and Marines that worked for me. And it was it's still to a degree very true that the outreach to the spouse is pretty much on a volunteer basis. Somebody's going to raise a hand and say, hey, I'd like for my spouse to get some counseling or something to help with this transition.
Yeah, I think, right there, you nailed it on the head. We all go through that TAP class coming out, whether it's a couple of days of create your resume, go to Home Depot website, sign up, all that good stuff. But, it's the spouses, family that need that same kind of TAP class on what to expect, right? Because they're the ones that are usually running the household when we're on deployments or wherever we are away from home. And they don't know what to look for in those veterans that are coming out that are having these mental health issues or suicidal ideation. And, what are the signs that you need to look for in your veteran as a spouse or as a kid and things like that. And so absolutely the military needs some sort of transition class for the families just as much as they do for the veterans coming out of there.
And they're getting a lot better at that. But I think it's they beta test this program based off the stats that you mentioned.
Right.
They reacted rather than, got ahead of it. Multiply that by the spouse as a foreign national and has only recently, been in the country or has only become an American citizen. Maybe there's a language issue in some cases. So you multiply all that, they don't know how to reach out. Or maybe there's a cultural block to asking for that kind of help. And then multiply that by people who don't retire, but just decide to separate from the service. So things like TRICARE don't apply and a lot of other issues. Medical care now becomes an issue and things like that.
Right.
And it can take, although it's getting better now, it can take a good little while to get your VA rating so that you can even go to the VA and get medical care or psychological care. You could have 6-7 months there or longer waiting on that rating. One of the big things that I saw as a GS civilian, and of course I worked in a military organization, a lot of first sergeants were getting ahead of the idea, you need to be applying for these benefits. You need to start this process before you actually separate.
Right.
Determination still is dependent on that DD-14, but you can start gathering records, talking with a veteran service officer.
Right.
The biggest help that I've seen, and that maybe that's just here in Southwest Missouri and South Central Missouri, is the DAV, the Disabled American Veterans. And when the DAV decides to help you, whether you're a member or not, although they do encourage you to join and it's not that expensive, but when they write a letter, they're talking about 6 million people backing them up on that letter. So what a lot of people have told me, talk to the, obviously start the process with your VSO, but go to the DAV. And I'm sure the VFW is much the same way. But what I've personally seen is the DAV very active.
Yeah.
And like I said, when they write a letter saying, this person needs to get a rating, this is why, it's backed up by 6 million members. And that's
yeah. To your point, back in June, I started my up from 90% to 100%, went to the local VSO here in the county, who happens to be the president of the local DAV chapter. And so she knew exactly what she was doing. Right. And so we went through the whole process and she walked me through it step by step. This is what you got to do, say, yada, yada. Less than a year later, I got the 100% rating with the back pay. And, I'm one of the fortunate ones that hasn't had to fight for 10 or 15 years to be able to get that done. But and so her and I were talking about things like that. And it's those veterans out there that maybe they spent 4 or 5 years and they don't feel like they deserve that rating from the VA, but they do. That's another stigma that these veterans think is there's people out there worse off than I am, right? There's people that have been blown up, lost limbs, yada, yada. They deserve it. I don't. doesn't matter. If you served, you need to go get it, because that's going to open you up to healthcare and mental health care and all kinds of other things that you deserve, that your family deserves. And
Yeah,
so
you're leaving a benefit on the table.
right,
And,
right,
you're leaving it on the table. It doesn't go to someone else, and you're not taking it from anyone else.
right.
Your benefit, you just choose not to pick it up. And
Yes,
I've
sir.
seen that culturally for people to go, I've never been on relief in my life. I'm not about to go get disabled. I can work, I can do stuff. And that's an attitude. And it's, like I said, sometimes it's a little cultural. Depends on where you're from and what your, how your parents talk to you. I had an uncle, my Uncle Robert, my dad's brother, World War II veteran, 6 combat jumps in World War II. Now, I haven't looked this up in a while, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there were only 8 combat jumps in World War II altogether in the European.
Something like that,
yeah. He was on 6 out of those. However many there were, he was on 6. He crossed the Rhine. He did the relief at Bastogne. I mean, this guy was both 82nd and 101st Airborne, depending on what period of time and how they needed to reorganize once they were after D-Day. They reorganized a lot of these guys and threw together units. So he has both 82nd and 101st Airborne patches. He has passed.
Yeah.
I got assigned to take care of this man. My dad could no longer do it. Also, he was in his 90s, and I became his attorney, and worked with him, and found out that here's this gentleman, still very cognizant, still very aware of who he was. Always, he was my uncle was 96 at the time I took over, as his attorney of record to help him with his pay his bills and things. He was in a nursing home, not a VA nursing home. He was paying for his own hearing aids, his own prescription, and everything. And once I got all these records and I discovered this, I said, why the heck isn't the VA stepping up to help a World War II veteran? Given what, I think 1,500 a day died. We're almost out of them now. I mean, if you were maybe 14 years old in 1945, you might still be alive. But I questioned him about that. What has the VA done for you? What have you? And he says, I've never even called him. Never occurred to him.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart. In fact, I could tell that he was within 6 months of being on the street, because he was just going through his checking account, his life savings, until it was zero. And at 96 years old, he was within, just a few months of being on the street. So I immediately contacted the VA, and to their credit, we never heard of this cat. We can pull up his records. We certainly can we certainly can find him, but we may not have time to do anything with him. It may take a while. So that was kind of a heads up. And I went back and talked to some of my soldiers who were, a little older, getting ready to retire after, say, 25 years or so. I said, it's not too early to be thinking about the fact that you may need care when you're older, and you can actually apply for this type of care, for the future.
Yeah.
And sadly, what the VA told me is, by the time we find him in the system, get him signed up, find him a bed in a VA home at 96, he's probably not going to be here.
Yeah. And, that unfortunately, there's a lot of the older veterans that are experiencing that. And that's what I try to tell the younger guys coming out is, you might be fine right now. Your knees might not be hurting, your shoulder might be fine, but it's 10 years down the road when things start changing that you realize, okay, now I'm not doing so hot. But because you didn't go back then, you have a hard time tracing it back to service, and the VA is going to deny you easier that way. And, like your story, my dad retired after 30 something years as well. And he didn't want to go to the VA because he saw what I went through going through the VA. And he's like, I'm just not going to do it. But he came down with stage 2 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer. And I was talking to him. I was like, look, you've got to get into the VA, whether you're disabled or not. You got to get in there, because as a veteran with cancer, they will 100% take care of everything. Right. And so I and his family down there were trying to get him in. This is in southern Mississippi, which, from my understanding, the VA is pretty good down there. But he finally got an appointment scheduled to go in, and then he gets a letter in the mail saying, well, we got to cancel your appointment and reschedule you. Well, how does that work for cancer patients, right? It's not like you can sit around and wait to get into the VA. So again, I say that to say this is, again, if you're coming out the day one, before you even come out of the service, go to the VA, get signed up, get whatever you can. And years down the road, it's going to be even easier for you. So let's go back. You had a lot of different careers in your life and a lot of different transitions. And you said, you quit cold turkey coming out of the service and then going on from there. So what did you learn from that transition, that first transition over the years that helped those transitions become easier for you?
I think the biggest thing that interrupts a healthy transition. And it's not medical, it's not disability, it's not filing for paperwork, it's not maintaining your fitness with a decent diet. That's the first thing that goes to hell, by the way, But, I would sum it all up in one word. It's pride. And pride is a killer. People don't talk or they don't act because of this sense of pride. And the military does a great job of building pride inside of you. Pride in yourself, your unit, your team, what have you, right?
Yes, sir.
They do a great job of building that pride. And what do you do when those support mechanisms drop off? And so, I think that's what if I could put it into one word that interrupts and destroys a healthy transition, it's pride.
Yeah. I completely agree with that, because there's some people that, they come out and they're like, I did all this stuff, right? Now I'm going to go find a job very easily. I want to continue getting paychecks and move on. And sometimes it just does not work that way. I know I got 8 years in active duty Navy. I did everything from master helmsman to working with JAG to sonar technician. I worked on, when I came out, the newest sonar equipment that the Navy had to offer, right? So I figured I'm going to go in Texas. What else am I going to do? Go into the gas and oil industry, right? Sonar and ground is similar to sonar on the water, a little bit different math, but no, I got out and they're like, well, no, you're not qualified. Well, I know I don't know the equipment, but at least I know, the mechanisms and the math behind it. I should be able to pick up pretty quick. Well, no, we can't do that. I was like, all right, well, let's check out security teams or something, around DFW. They've got to be going on. No, you didn't take the Texas security class or the TCOL or anything like that. Okay, well, let's keep going on down the chain. Home Depot, Lowe's. No, we don't want to hire you, even though you're veteran friendly. I was trying McDonald's and Hardee's and everything else. Well, you're overqualified. Look, I just wanted it. At some point, it comes down to, I just need a job, right? And I think that's what a lot of veterans don't realize is sometimes you've got to take what you can get until you can get to a better position. And I think but that also goes back to, you need to plan before you get out. Even if you're saying 4 years, I'm done, you got to start planning that year ahead and start looking on these things. Where are you going to live? What are you going to do for a job? Where are you going to go to school? Because if you think you're just going to get out and go straight into work in today's economy and everything, good luck with that, right?
Yeah, it's a lot better nowadays than it was.
It is.
I don't know what year you separated. I was in the mid 80s. So, like I said, we got corralled into a room. All you quitters, get into this room, trying to, this lady from the VA is going to come in and give you a brief, but every one of you walked in here and every one of you is going to walk out. So you don't need none of this crap. And I don't know why this E8 thought he was saving the government money or something, but she came in, gave a brief, was very nice, very informative, handed out a lot of paperwork. And on the way out, you could be surprised how much that stuff was in the trash. Because at the time, I was still in my 20s, still, running about 4 or 5 miles a day, very physically fit at the time. didn't think I needed anything. And again, that's that pride.
Yeah.
And what I see with
Absolutely.
older guys, I've even met veterans, and this always breaks my heart. They re-enlist up to about 14 years, and then something happens in their career that just sticks in their craw. Well, I'm going to get out. And I'm thinking, no. And I have sat guys, I know one active duty Marine and a couple of different active duty soldiers. I sat in my office 14 years, and you're an E6. You'll make E7 in the next 6 years, I'm sure. But even not, you can do 20 at E6. And you're going to give up all of that. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that none of these people really spoke with their spouse about it before they pulled the plug and made that decision. And again, that's that pride. Everybody doesn't have the best stellar super career that you dream of, but you have to look at sometimes at what I do is important.
Yeah.
And I've got to take care of myself and my family. And like I said, that pride's a killer.
It is. It sure is. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll get into some more discussion. And then we're going to roll into the author that you are, start discussing some of these books and how that came about. So we'll be right back after these messages.
These books right here? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, those ones right there. The blockade runners right behind you.
Thought we were through with this. Then I watched the evening news. There were folks that still wouldn't stand for the old red, white, and blue. At first it made me fight and mad how they think that that's okay. Then I thought they just don't understand, and given a chance I'd say, have you ever been there when taps was played or for a 21-gun salute? Had to hear the words you never want to hear. Have you ever had to face that truth? When a son or daughter didn't come back home to a family so devoted, then you might not disrespect our flag. If you'd ever been handed one folded, have you seen a heartbroken mother or a father fall to his knees? Been there when a family got the news that your freedom wasn't free? Have you seen a flag draped coffin? If you did, how did it make you feel to know a soldier died to give you the right to stand or kneel? Most of us are immigrants, proud to call America home. And I'll stand for the red, white, and blue, even if I gotta stand alone. 'Cause I've been there when taps was played for a 21-gun salute. I had to hear the words I didn't want to hear. Yeah, I had to face that truth. When a son and daughter didn't come back home to a family so devoted, you never disrespect our flag. If you'd ever been handed one folded, you never disrespect our flag. If you'd ever been handed one folded. One folded.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Full Speed Ahead After Battle on Military Broadcast Radio. My guest tonight, David C. Reed, veteran, law enforcement, author, all around doing everything. Before we get into those books, though, I got a question for you, and this seems to be probably one of the biggest transitions, probably because a veteran. I'm going to say this, and I don't mean it technically, but a veteran is a police officer. A police officer is a veteran. I mean, they go hand in hand almost, one on a bigger scale, one locally. But, in your experience, what makes that a good fit for a veteran to go into law enforcement? Why do you think that is?
Well, I know you were Navy, and I'm sure the Navy has a set of values. The Army has their 7 values, and
Yep.
one of them that probably goes to what you're asking is selfless service.
Mm-hmm.
And the value of selfless service fits well in law enforcement. It fits well with firefighters. It fits well with EMS, nursing. It fits well with a lot of things. It fits well with your volunteer work. It fits well with what you're
Right.
doing right now here through this podcast, elevating an issue onto a platform where people can access it and get some information. But I think you specifically asked about police work. I think it goes into the idea if you approach police work correctly, and over 40 years, both full time and then reserve, the second half of my career was as a reservist, as a trainer, or as a reserve criminal investigator. It's the selfless service aspect is so important because you have to look at it almost like a ministry. You have to look at it as, I'm not here just to make a paycheck. I've met a lot of cops that were quote unquote mercenaries that basically chased a paycheck. And, everybody needs a paycheck. I'm not downing that. But they weren't in it for the right reason.
Right.
You've met service members that served, veterans who didn't do it for the right reasons. And maybe that's why it didn't take or fit. But the vast majority of people that I've met that were active duty military of any service had that inside of them, that national pride, the desire, I'm going to stand where others cannot. I'm going to stand for those who cannot. And with police work, it's kind of the same thing. Joseph Wambaugh called it the thin blue line. And, you see these stickers that police officers use, and it's a big fat blue line, and that's just commercial crap. The real sticker should be a black and a razor thin blue line. And the reason for that is that in darkness, in anarchy, in confusion, there is that razor thin blue line of police officers standing arm in arm. And we say, here, no further. You don't get to go after the people behind me.
Right.
But there's just a few of us. And I think that kind of attitude appeals to active duty military because they realize I have stood on the wall and protected everybody behind me. My fellow service members, family members, my nation, everyone behind me is safe, but I'm going to stand here.
Right.
That's both our pride and a blessing, and it's also the curse of pride. They can follow if you don't correctly get the counseling that you need and set up a good transition. But I think you asked a good hard question. Why do a lot of service members look at some sort of service job? And it's not just military police or shore patrol or Army or Marine entities or Navy shore patrol, Master at Arms, Air Force security forces. That's not the only service members who choose to go into some sort of job. I've met an awful lot of firefighters that were veterans, particularly I guess the Air Force, I think, has the most service members who are in a pure firefighting career field. Those guys get snapped up. Just, I guess, the same thing for air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
But with that law enforcement, like I said, EMS, firefighter, and law enforcement, you get that same thin blue line sort of attitude, except it was a thin green line before.
Yeah, absolutely. So then let me ask you this. With the veterans coming out of the military, going into law enforcement, coming out of the military, a lot of them will have some experiences or call it trauma or whatever you will. And to be able to get into law enforcement, I would imagine you have to suppress a lot of that, especially when it comes to like your personal history statements. Have you ever, thought about suicide or things like that? And you're going to say, obviously, you're going to say no because you want that job. But then you get into something like law enforcement firefighting, and then you're adding more experience or trauma onto what you've already experienced. And so that's where a lot of, suicide comes into law enforcement or veterans.
Or
And
anger,
so,
abuse
or
of
anger
force.
issues,
Yeah.
alcoholism, yes, all kinds, all sorts of
All
things.
kinds of
So,
stuff,
so what is law enforcement, I guess, doing these days to help them to break that stigma? Because I know for the longest time, if an officer says, "Hey, look, I've got some mental issues," you're almost put on a desk duty, or if not kicked out. But I know some of that has come to light these days. And how is that looking for those
Well,
that
it's a
need
fine
that help?
line between wanting to help and wanting to retain someone, and that's a word the military uses a lot, and a lot of our civilian law enforcement cousins are beginning to use that term, retention. How do I retain a high value person? But there's a line between retention and liability. And for a cop who's putting on a gun every day and going out and enforcing the law, and to be honest, compared to the vast number of military service members who either never really fire a gun that much, I'm not talking about the percentage of special operators and military police, people like that.
Right.
I'm talking about the probably 60 to 80% of the military that qualifies once or twice a year, but they have a job, right? No less important, but my point being is that once you become a cop, that gun is like a hammer to a carpenter. It's exactly the tool, one of the tools, as well as non-lethal devices that we have, but also de-escalation techniques and stuff. So someone who's suffering, like you said, and I'm a veteran and I'm going to apply for a law enforcement job, and somebody says, have you ever thought about suicide? And if the answer inside is yes, then I think the correct answer, with the exception of like these small 5-man law enforcement agencies that are, maybe going to pass you by or something, but I think the correct answer is, of course, it's crossed my mind, but I've received the right counseling, I've received the right treatment, and I know how to deal with those thoughts. I know how to deal with those issues, and I know when I need to ask for help. And I think an answer like that to a recruiter of law enforcement is going to be a lot better than a lie.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said that, because I know, because I had that personal history statement going to work for the Wise County Sheriff's Department, and it lists all that out there. And when you go do the drug test, of course, it came up positive for antidepressants, and so I had to tell that story and provide the proof. But they said, hey, no big deal. As long as you got the proof and you're not faking it and everything, we can work around it. Again, I'm not the cop carrying a gun every day, so it's a little bit different story. But so let's get into something a little bit. Go ahead.
Let me add one last thing. I always counsel people who are transitioning, soldiers and Marines that came into me, hey, this is what I want to do. And I'm like, let's get ahead of absolutely every issue that might come up in an interview or an application. Get ahead of it. Let's bring it up first so that we manage that discussion, as opposed to you're reacting and you get caught off guard when you asked it. So one of the things that really helps transitioning veterans are rehearsed interviews. Get 5 or 6 friends, mixed civilian and military, that will help you with this, and interview you, a mock interview, so that you're prepared for these things, and also prepare documents. If I'm applying, like you said, you had antidepressants in your blood work, I would have had a document right there, which I'm sure
Yep.
you did, and said, no, let me
Yep.
tell you about it, and I'm going to manage that conversation, so to speak. So get ahead of any issue you've got.
It's better to be proactive than reactive in this situation. Absolutely. So let's get into this topic about how did you or why did you decide to become an author? Where did that happen?
I've been writing my whole life, and even in my military jobs, I wrote doctrine, I wrote educational documents, I wrote lesson plans, but fiction writing, I've done this sort of as a hobby, going well back into the 80s, and mostly it was short stories. I wrote a couple of very bad novels, and they died the death that they deserved. But transitioning from law enforcement, GS-13 military, active duty, everything. When I retired, I have 4 retirements. I retired from everything. And I spent the first 6-7 months, maybe a year, landscaping the house and moving rock, and I tore my rotator cuff, moving too much, doing rock work around the house and stuff like that. And then what? And so ideas, stories, were always on my mind. And so what I wanted to do was take real life incidents, stories, cases that I'd worked as a cop, and then also real military stories, and fictionalize them so that I could bring them out. And Cold, Dark, and Silent was my first novel. It's, I think, averaging 4.9 on Amazon. It's selling very well. It's a lot of reader engagement. And so with that, I started the sequel, and then I've got the 3rd book and a 4th book that'll be out late this year. But it's a way, it gives me, the things to do. It gives me an outlet to where I can tell a story. And as you know, your very best law enforcement guys and your very best military guys that you ever hung around with, they always have these great stories. Let me tell you about this one time. And this is basically my version of, let me tell you about that. And so, as you're, great, you're showing it. Yeah, they're available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. If your local Barnes and Noble or Books A Million don't have them, go in there and ask. They'll get them shipped to you. You can use the QR code, or you can go right here to Amazon and click. It's also, a lot of people prefer audiobooks these days. And I listen to podcasts, especially yours, but a couple other podcasts I listen to pretty regularly, but I haven't really done audiobooks, but everybody kept asking me. So we've released both of these titles on audiobook, and they're doing very well there too.
Good.
But these are,
so it seems
stories, this is the main story. The main character is a guy named Ash, Army veteran, war veteran, leaves the military and goes into law enforcement, spends a long time in law enforcement, and then has to retire to take care of his dad, his aging father. And so he becomes kind of what we're talking about. He becomes a prideless transition guy, in that he doesn't know what to do with himself. And in fact, the term he describes himself as is rudderless. And then, be careful what you ask for, right? Because all of a sudden something drops into his lap. Some locals ask for some help. He gets involved with it, and almost gets killed for his involvement. This is a true story that I have fictionalized and brought out, because it's almost at a point where you can't really tell the truth sometimes about things. There's always somebody out there waiting. But this was a case where a woman went missing for 2.5 years. And without ruining the story, I'll tell you, don't read chapter 28 by yourself. It's a little itchy. Yeah.
And
the blockade,
well, I put that link.
I
put that link in the comments for everybody. So any viewers tuning in, y'all follow that link along, grab one of them books. But David, it seems like writing is an outlet for a lot of veterans these days, whether it's songwriting, poems, books, whatever. It seems like that's almost like a therapy for them now. Is that kind of how you feel writing these books? You just, I know it's different when you're putting things into words and you see it differently that way. Sometimes things click a little differently in your mind, and you see things how they truly are. Is that kind of how it feels for you when you're writing these things?
Is it cathartic? Yes.
Yeah.
Does it fill my time and inspire me and give me something to do, a reason to get out of bed, a reason to keep myself relatively fit? You know, not eat cheeseburgers every day and sit and watch daytime TV. You know, that's a killer. Any daytime TV, I don't care what quality it is, it's a killer. I watch the morning news, turn it off, and I don't turn it on again until later at night. So this gives me a purpose, an action. I will tell you that I'm in a couple of different writers guilds, and the Springfield Writers Guild, Springfield, Missouri. The Springfield Writers Guild is an exceptional organization because there are a lot of people in there like us. And not everybody is a novelist. A novelist is like a marathon runner. But if you're a veteran and you've got ideas and stories and things that you feel like you need to get out, but you're not quite sure if you can or should you, or is anybody interested? Well, maybe not, but maybe it'll help you. So journaling is one thing. A lot of people write short stories. Just tell a few small stories, and you never know. I've read books that were anthologies where people put together stories from a large group of people, and you can contribute to those, you know. But writing is definitely something that I encourage people to do, especially if they're dealing with the demons, if they're dealing with the enemy that's trying to steal you from your family, from your country, from your life. One of the ways you can deal with that enemy is to write down your thoughts, bare naked, if you have to. And then if you get to a point where you need to share that with just one other person, maybe that's easier than sitting down and talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're coming to the end of the show. Been here for an hour already. Great conversation around many different topics. So thank you so much. Cold, Dark, and Blockade Runners. Go find that on Amazon. The link's in the comments. Kindle as well. And we've got the Elite Watch coming out. So be looking for that in March, right?
That's right.
Yep, so be looking for that one.
First or second week in March. Yeah.
All right. So guys, keep an eye out for that. But, David, at the end of the show, every week, I like to give my guests about 2 minutes to speak their minds or their hearts to the public, to the world. Whatever you want to leave in this world, the floor is yours.
Oh, that's fantastic. Don't ever give me 2 minutes to talk. I'll feel 17. But, I will tell you that I'm the luckiest guy on the planet in that I have a wonderful wife of 35 years who has been supportive. She's been there through a lot of tough stuff, and I've drug her through a lot of tough stuff, but she stayed right there. And there's something about cops and emergency room nurses. We speak the same language. And so she was an ER nurse for a long time. Now she's an educator, but she stuck with me all this time. I'm not going to say I wouldn't have made it without her, but man, it would have been ugly. And so I always, praise her, give her the credit that she's due for how she has helped teach me and lead me and mentor me in ways that I didn't even really understand or could accept at the time. So if you're out there and you're dealing with the enemy and the enemy is trying to take you, just, reach out to, even if it's just one other person. Don't be afraid to seek the help that you need. Pride and cheeseburgers every day is what kills a lot of veterans, But seriously, pride is the enemy. And not getting the benefits that you and your family deserve, or not seeking the help that your family would want you to get. If you polled your family and your imminent friend, your immediate friends, they would tell you, yes, we want you to get help. So then the only problem is you. Reach out, do it, as opposed, because I'll tell you this, and I'll close with this. I've been to too damn many funerals to be a guy my age, too many funerals. Don't want to go to another one. Reach out for that help. Don't let pride get you. And,
Yes, sir.
and I thank you, Josh, by the way, for having this platform where you can elevate this issue to get people's attention. And I appreciate being on the show and hopefully trying to, being of some help.
Absolutely. I think I couldn't have said it better myself. Nobody's going to get that help for you. You got to get out there, take it yourself, right? Just like you did through boot camp, just like you did through the war and every other battle. You've got a team to the left and right of you. You're not fighting this alone. So don't go through life alone without your team. So David, thank you so much for coming on the message. Good luck with everything. Good luck with the book launch coming out in March. And you are welcome back on the show anytime. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.
Have a good night. All right. That's going to close out this week's episode of Full Speed Ahead After Battle. Our guest tonight was David C. Reed, law enforcement, military, author, all around, doing all kinds of amazing things. And like he said, and the numbers support it, is pride. Is one of the number one issues that our veterans are facing coming out of service. They don't want to ask for the help, right? Because it makes them feel weak. They're alone, less than a man, less than a woman, whatever you want to call it. But like I just said, you went through boot camp with a team. You were on a ship with a team. You deployed with a team. You still have a team. It just looks different. Right? You're the same person that was in boot camp in a war. You're the same person now. You just have a bigger tool belt around you. May look different, but the team's there. Ask for help. And as David said, some of that transition, a lot of times our veterans don't think about the spouses when they make that decision to get out. They don't think about the families. The families struggle a lot when they come out. Everything changes. And so next week, my guest on this show is Jenna Griffith. She's a military spouse, and her mission in life is helping spouses, military families with the trauma, the change, the transition, life after service, how to look out for your veteran and spot those signs when they're having their dark days. And so we're going to do exactly that. We're going to give this platform to the families and the spouses next week. So make sure you tune in for that. Upcoming events this week, other than starting my new job tomorrow, we got the VFW District 21 district meeting this Sunday. For anybody in the DFW area, come check that out. And we will see you next week on Full Speed Ahead After Battle on Military Broadcast Radio, where we give veterans a voice. And as I always tell you every week, you're not in this alone. It's okay to reach out. Like I showed you in the numbers, if you're seeking that VA help, you're highly more likely to make it out of this world alive than you are without seeking that help. Suicide rates go up for those not seeking the VA assistance. The numbers are there. We saw them. I read them. Go check them out. You're not in this alone. Ask for help. It's okay. Dismissed.
Life is like a duck. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. Here at Military Broadcast Radio, we're teaming up with our friends at Die Tired, the veteran-friendly music band spreading strength, resilience, and mental health awareness one shirt at a time.
And check this out. Their brand new shirts feature broadcast beaker right on the breast pocket. A reminder that you can weather the storm, and you're never alone.
Shirts are only $25, and proceeds support giving veterans a voice. MBR's mission to teach veterans how to podcast and videocast. Because when our vets are talking, they're not overthinking. They're not second-guessing. Together, we stop the 22 stigma. Grab your shirt today at mbradio.us and hit the shop. Or go directly to toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband. That's toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband.
Suit up, stand strong.
Remember, we're unduckable together.
You're built tougher than the storm.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.